Hello everyone and welcome to Optimal Training Group. In my previous video I showed you how to create a horizontal navigational bar, which is this here, and how everything is coming from a list. So my home, site A, site B training, everything is coming from the list, including the drop down. And I promise to show you how to do the mega menu, which is this here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the list that I'm using. So I am using training navigation as I showed you in my previous video. I'm also using a sub navigation. Go to site contents. And then I have two new lists that I'm also using as well. And that is going to be the mega menu category and also the category menu. Now if you're not familiar with what a mega menu is, oh, here you go. So my category menu and my mega menu category. So here's my mega menu category, and basically a mega menu is just a category of items that's displayed in like a panel, as I showed you. So this is sort of like a panel, and these are the different categories of items. So here are my categories: BL, DT, HR, IT, and then my category menu, and these are the menus that will be the item menus that will be displayed for each category. So for the BL category you have this, DT category you have this, and the IT category you have this. So that's what's going on. Now, just like last week, I got the idea from W3C schools. You know, instead of why do something from scratch if you can just recreate the wheel? Except this is just HTML, and what I have done is to use the DOM API to kind of recreate this same concept. But my stuff is coming from a list and it's not static; it's dynamic. And so that's how this is. Oops, refresh the page. That's how my mega menu is. That's how this is working. So let's go to the code so I can show you really quick how everything is working. So the first thing I do in my file here is I declare these different variables, and I declare them as arrays. So my cache nav data, sub nav data, mega menu data, category menu data, my cache mega menu data. And all I'm doing is just getting that ready so I can grab all the data from my list and put them in the right arrays so I can use it later and throughout my code. So that's what this is doing here. So I grab all the data for the train navigation, sub navigation, as I mentioned. And then what I do is, after I've gotten everything, I do this create navigation. The create navigation. So we went over this last week. I just added an extra line. So in my create navigation, I'm going through to see which ones have a drop down and which ones don't, and which ones are my mega menu. And this is what I've added in this file. So when I get here, and in my training navigation, let me show you something else that I did differently. Now, if you remember, if there's going to be a drop down, it will have the value yes, and if it's not, no. But this one I have training, meaning that this is going to be a mega menu. I could have named this mega menu, but I did training to represent that. Oops. So let me go back. Where did I go? My file. So if it's training, if it's not a no or a yes, that means it's training. So I pass in my URL name, so the value, which would be training, of the menu item. And I pass it to my build directorate mega menu, which is this. I get a reference to the top nav. This is where I'm going to append all of my values. And I go to this sub nav bar. And in my sub nav bar, same thing as last week, just a few different things. I'm going through, and as I am, right here. As I'm going through, I am creating my menu item based on what's in my list, and also the drop down values in my list. So that's what all this is doing. Now, what you see something extra here. If it's, say if this is training, you need to use the M drop down class, and that comes from the CSS for the Mega Menu from the W3 schools and from the horizontal navigational bar that I showed in my last video. The CSS seems to be similar. So all I did was I just added the M to the drop down to those that are the mega menu classes. I just added the M to say, hey, this is for the Mega Menu. So as I'm going through, if it's training, add the Mega Menu class. If not, then just add the regular drop down. Same thing for the buttons. So I'm doing all that. Same thing as last week. I get to my cache sub nav data, and as I am looping through, I'm saying that if it's not training, and if it's equal to whatever the actual sub nav is, if that value exists in this array, then do this. So it does all of that, and then it appends it. And then I come out of that loop and I say, so let's say this is false, nothing happens there. If the directorate is equal to training, then that's where this comes in. So if it's equal to training, let me bring up my little, give me a second here. I want to show you the CSS for it. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of going through and I'm building this with the DOM API, and this is easy to follow along. Just build it with the DOM API, and then I jump into my cache Mega Menu data, and I loop through. So I loop through each of the categories. I'm looping through M column. I'm building everything, and then for each of those categories, the items that belong under each of those categories, I'm looping through that from my list, and I'm just building it with the DOM API. And that's what's going on here. And all that is happening here. I have the M column here. Here's the M row before it. So I get the M row, and then I'm looping through each of the categories. So category 1, loop through category 1. You create it with the DOM API, add the text, append it, and then you loop through each of the category menus. Except I'm just grabbing this stuff from my list and I'm just building it. Append it, and then once I append it, I return it back here. It returns it back to this build nav, and I just append the build nav to my top nav, and that's basically it. And that's what's going on. That's what's going on in my list. That's what's going on here. And if you're familiar with CSS, you can style this however you want. Here's the CSS file. This is the CSS. Everything that had to do with the Mega Menu, I just added a capital M to it. It was just much easier than to go through and see what the differences are. So that's what I did. So I hope that made sense. I'll provide a link to GitHub with all the files that you need. And see you next time. Bye.